Hey guys, I'm Robin Lindars, product marketing manager and chief digital nerd, social nerd over here at NetBase Quid. And I know we've all had to figure out how to pivot in 2020. It's been kind of a crazy year, but maybe even more crazy for some industries like the restaurant industry. And so I'm super excited to present Jennifer Savage, who is the senior analyst of social intelligence at Chipotle, who's talking about adapting to and tracking consumer behavior during the pandemic. So thanks so much, Jennifer. We're happy to have you.
Great, thanks, Robin. Happy to be here. I'm talking about tracking and adapting to consumer behavior during the pandemic, and we'll go ahead and just dive right in. So as we all know, COVID picked up very rapidly in the US in its first introduction earlier this year. So from the very beginning, we saw consumers rethinking kind of how they thought about safety, the economy, their own spending habits. Consumers began immediately dealing with a multitude of shifts in their day-to-day lives: lockdown, shelter in place, dining room closures for our industry specifically, grocery stores running scarce, shifting to working from home and remote schooling. All of these no doubt affected the lives of every day for each and everyone, physically, emotionally, but it also affected how we think about consumers. So we began tracking these implications for our brand immediately. NetBase was a crucial part in playing how we really thought about the ever-changing consumer perception. So it was apparent very quickly that strategies would have to change. We'd have to be able to adapt quickly and more nimble, and how we can keep our company evolving to wants and needs of consumers. So we began using AI Studio along with the NetBase analyzation to identify how trending topics were changing broadly across QSR, fast casual, and even grocery stores, anything that would affect how our consumers thought about us and how they consumed food more generally. So by tracking these early indicators using NetBase, we picked up that consumers were eager to share their experiences when out and about. This showed us that it was imperative to focus on safety measures, making sure that our employees were taken care of, but also that our consumers felt safe whenever they did come to our stores. We made sure that the demand for front care workers that were continuing to work during the early stages of the pandemic were clearly met by Chipotle. So we continue to track this sentiment using NetBase from consumers during this time. We asked consumers how they were feeling about us and our competitors, and even more generally, just across the landscape. The need for easy access to food, fear of closures that would affect feeding their families and putting food on the table, and also a call for safety measures that would protect both consumers and employees alike were found across the board in sentiment. So we pivoted pretty quickly. Consumers knew Chipotle was doing our part to take action and ensure safety and accessibility for everyone. We implemented tamper-proof packaging, as well as contact delivery to ensure accessibility and safety on both sides of the delivery experience. And we also, for those who were unable to order delivery or preferred that in-store ordering experience, we ensured social distancing within our stores and made sure we were abiding by all CDC protocols to make sure a safe experience was had by both the consumer and our employees that were still working on the front line. As time moved on, we continued to utilize NetBase themes and COVID topics to track the conversation. So coverage on safety measures pretty much remained steady throughout most areas as we began testing reopenings and what that may look like in some states. While consumers wanted to continue that easy access to food and shopping, whatever they may want, they also had a continued demand, and rightfully so, that companies were to step up and ensure that employee safety and increased sick policies were in place. This called for increased community. We were all watching each other's back, communities were tighter, and it quickly followed a natural urge to support and donate to community heroes and frontline workers. So we tapped into this desire to support the community healthcare heroes by implementing promos that would align with this desire and need for our consumers and the tone and brand action that we wanted to implement as a company. We followed the buzz in NetBase across all of the industry's efforts. Consumers were responding to that need. Overall, consumers were largely united through brand efforts that lent hands to where it was needed most within their communities and healthcare heroes and frontline workers abroad. So outside of our industry, we were also utilizing broader COVID topics within NetBase to track trending terms, uncover insights about the larger conversation, and just making sure we were in the know of what was going on outside of our industry as well. So while we knew that, the search and desire for information was largely leading those top terms, we saw the obvious news, government agencies, all of those types of mentions consuming much of consumer conversation on social. However, we did see that people were discussing the inherent need to connect with each other, stay in touch even though they were at home by themselves, and those stay-at-home orders were still in place early on. Specifically, we saw that Netflix was pulling through. They were shining through with their Netflix party and all of the other social aspects that they were putting into place. So we quickly pivoted to tap into this insight that consumers had a need for both the connection and entertainment. Furthermore, when we were analyzing outside of the COVID conversation, we saw that lunch is kind of a social ritual for people. People were missing the social atmosphere of lunch. For many people, lunch just isn't a meal. It's a break in the middle of their day, a chance to recharge with their peers, coworkers, and just take a step back from whatever they're doing, whether that's school or work. Since we knew they were missing this entertainment aspect and connection with others, we implemented Chipotle Together. It was a promotion and an online space for our consumers to gather from Zoom to IGTV that united Chipotle consumers over free burritos and entertainment. An effort to tap into that missing social ritual of lunch, how we could bring people together with the deepening boredom that consumers are expressing, the need for entertainment, but also the social aspect of lunch overall. Throughout all these efforts, we saw success with our social KPIs as we tracked them in NetBase. We were leaning into this insights and quick social analysis that were feasible due to the utilization of NetBase's tools so that we could stay largely ahead of the curve and top of mind where our consumers were needing us throughout the pandemic so far. But the pandemic didn't only affect the QSR industry, and we knew that, so we kept eyes on what was going outside also. We tracked grocery shopping and the conversation around that within NetBase AI Studio to identify some of the conversations within the larger food dialogue on social. We discovered a thankfulness for restocked stores, for reinstated paychecks, stimulus checks, accessibility to food. This is all how consumers were affected by the pandemic and how they really started to think about their food choices. So this was imperative for us to think about and a key insight that we were able to gather from NetBase to stay on top of the curve. Furthermore, as we entered the fall and holiday season, we began using NetBase to follow, the limited time offers and the fall flavors that were popping up. We saw people were searching for feelings of comfort and normalcy as the year comes to an end and the holidays come around the corner. People are expressing that they're ready for 2020. They were taking to social more than any prior year to complain, vent, express despair. Negativity was on the rise. So we weren't alone in that. We saw some of the earliest fall launches from some of our competitors with fall flavors. Christmas shopping is on top of consumers' minds. Many people are already talking about Christmas lists or getting some of their shopping done, and that they'll be making their holiday purchase early this year. So we were seeing this reflected across the board as stores began to release holiday decors. Some of our favorite streaming channels are beginning to release holiday favorites early in the season. We were really seeing those effects of seeking that normal, warm comfort feeling from the holidays. So some final thoughts to remember: detecting early signs and shifts in behaviors. Watching the broader conversation of the industry can lead to some key learnings, those that hold both positive and negative implications for brands. Outside of your direct industry, identifying and understanding areas that you may be able to affect your target consumers, what's top of their mind, what's relevant, how can you stay relevant with them? And lastly, expanding your scope to better understand cultural trends can help you be more nimble, jump on the front end, and really be on top of new activations in a new light. That's it.
Wow. Well, first off, this really makes me want Chipotle, because I always want Chipotle, but especially right now. And I think this has just been such a tough year for everyone, but especially for restaurants, because it's just been, what to expect at, not at really every minute, So Jen, so you mentioned, and I thought this was really interesting, that you guys do categorical or industry level analysis, just because we at NetBase, of course, we've been telling people that there's a lot of value in doing that for a long time, because a lot of people just look at themselves as a brand, but don't look at the larger industry they operate in. So would you mind sharing, just so other people can learn, what other industries or maybe things that you guys keep an eye on, outside of just Chipotle, like you mentioned, groceries and things like that, that you guys like to keep an eye on for just to be in the know on, trends that might affect you guys?
Absolutely. I mean, for the restaurant industry, groceries are huge. When there's scarcity in groceries, people are going to turn to other areas, like during the pandemic, to find, that food to put on the table for family meals. But also, as grocery purchases ebb and flow, what day of the week do they purchase on? How can you tap into diet fads? That's a big one that we look into as well. Just anything that's going to affect your industry as far as, how people are talking about food for us. Is it specific diets? Is it, January hits, everybody's on that new fad diet for the year. We talk about, our competitors, like you said, there's huge value in understanding where other people are leaning into and where those windows of opportunity are for your brand to step into where people may haven't already.
And you hit on something else that I find really interesting, probably just because I'm into food. But before the pandemic, I felt like everyone was keto, especially in January, like you mentioned, everyone's trying to lose the weight and cut the carbs. What changes in the way people are eating have you guys seen in 2020? And how has that changed how you guys message your offering, if any?
Yeah. Well, I think we can all agree the summer body was canceled this year. We didn't really have much places to go. Vacations were canceled. I think it was a period of grace for people too. I think when we think about, you've got so many things that are stacked up on your plate. You may have kids at home. You may be trying to work over, your pet or whatever it may be. Stress is high. We have an election now too. I think people are giving themselves a lot of grace in the things that they can. So that's, what are you going to eat? It may not be the salad that you normally would have eaten throughout, the summer months. It's now, maybe I'm going to add queso to my meal because, I deserve queso on my meal today. I've been through a lot. I'm dealing with it the best I can. And we're all giving a little reflected.
That's so true. Like I felt like it was keto, and then all of a sudden on my Instagram feed, everyone's making sourdough. So
Exactly.
It's just interesting to see if you guys saw that shift as well. And building on that, are there, like you mentioned, and I see it, I went to Target yesterday and we haven't even had Thanksgiving yet, and all the Christmas stuff is out. Are you seeing trends right now from like a menu item perspective, or just, things that people are asking for that maybe they might not have been asking for? Like, are there things that you guys are shifting from a menu or a messaging approach, like just even for right now or even next year based on what you're seeing in the data?
Yeah, so we've seen, like you said, just holidays coming earlier, people searching for that little glimpse of, happiness and warmth that comes with the holiday season. So people are already talking about what they're going to buy, what's on their Christmas list, things like that. So I guess when it comes to, industries, whether it's retail, whether it's, QSR, whatever it is, it's how do you play into the holiday season? Is it gift cards? Is it merch? Is it specific menu items? And how do you lean into the idea that people are already talking about that? There's not really a lot of time to wait this year to figure out where you come into play from that aspect. So we're definitely, watching that conversation, watching what people are, really talking about and wanting, and really trying to be there when that time comes.
Awesome. So, we talk a lot about, here at, being in marketing at NetBase Quid, how, not every channel is the same, and they kind of have a different audience. There's you talk differently, or people talk differently there. So how do you guys decide what to post and share on different networks? Do you guys have a strategy on, Twitter's going to be this versus Facebook's going to be this versus Instagram's going to be this? Is it the same person that handles all of that? Is it a different person? I'd love to just get a look into, how you guys think about the different networks and plan for them, if you will.
Yeah, so we have an amazing social team. Give them a little shout out, Candace and Neve over on our social team. One of the biggest greatest success metrics for them is that they're just able to be really nimble. We don't plan things out very far in advance. And that was a huge success strategy that we had during the pandemic. It played out so well for us that was already kind of our strategy to stay super relevant from a cultural and trends perspective, and that we're nimble enough that we don't have, an entire year of content planned out. We're able to pivot pretty quickly. And they do a fabulous job of that over there. So
it's interesting you say that you don't plan it far out in advance because, there was actually just a little bit of a PR, I don't want to say PR snafu, but a post that was not well received by the Gap, basically showing a red and a blue sweatshirt zipping up. And it was, the day after the elections, but it really upset people. They were like, how can you guys post this? So I think it's smart that you guys, I almost feel like there's a fine balance between scheduling and like also reading the room and what's going on right now, so Definitely. I think that's really smart for you guys. And how do you guys know, let's say maybe there's no right or wrong answer for this. If something is kind of, let's just say trending and popular, but maybe also, I don't want to say controversial, how do you know when you should or should not jump on it? I feel like it's hard to make that call as a brand to go there, you know what I mean? Or to not go there. So like, for example, if you guys have to post or want to post something, does it have to go up a chain of command, or do you guys kind of live in the moment, or how does that work at a company like Chipotle? And I'm sure every company is different.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. But I think the beauty of, like I said, we don't have a lot of stuff planned far in advance. We're very, very nimble when it comes to our social strategy, is that, the last thing you want to do is jump on something that's not culturally relevant. But the more that we use tools like NetBase and things like that to watch those cultural trends and make sure that we really are in the know and in our consumers' head, what's your target audience? The millennials, Gen Zs, boomers, what is that? And making sure that you're in a regular pulse with them from time to time. So, almost immediately you have that gut instinct of, hey, I've been, keeping tabs on what they're talking about for the past 6 months, and this really feels off. This doesn't feel like our place. So I think it's a combination of, just always being ready and always being, watching, being in their mind space, if you will, through tools like NetBase, to make sure that you feel really confident when a time does come, that there may be a quick move for you to be able to jump in on a trend early. And
speaking of trends, like, do you guys on the social team, based on what you're seeing, do you guys have, I guess the question is, do you guys have any kind of reporting or interaction with like an innovations team or an insights team that works more like on menu ideas or things like that? And the reason I ask is I know social is a great way to understand maybe what people are asking for in the market. It's kind of like real-time market research. So, do you guys feed that information back to other departments, or is it, or, how do you guys circulate, I guess, these insights within Chipotle? Like, is there a process? And every company's different. So I feel like sometimes there's a challenge just figuring out what works. So what has worked for you guys? And, anything that you can share, I think will be helpful for others who are trying to figure out how they can share these insights across an organization as well.
Yeah, so we have a really strong marketing team, and a pretty small one probably than what you would expect from a company the size of Chipotle. But again, I keep saying nimble and, not a lot of planning and kind of living in the moment means that there's a ton of sharing of these, cultural trends or little tidbits that are popping up, whether that's from social or our consumer insights team. So I personally sit under the consumer insights team. There's just 3 of us. It's Jadid, Ali, and myself. And, they work very closely with our product innovation team. Anything that comes through the pipeline of, cauliflower rice is one that we're testing. That's something that we on from a social standpoint, our customer service, how are people responding to those innovation products that we're testing? And, how would that be received if we pushed it more broadly? There's a ton of integration between them. Our consumer insights team sits on our marketing insights and analytics team as well. So we're super closely tied with any sales data. If we see any indications of different promos, things like that, we're able to very quickly and easily tie together consumer sentiment from things like, where we're getting it from NetBase or customer service or surveys to that analytic data as well.
Wow. My mind's a little bit blown right now because you guys sound like the idyllic way that I feel like teams should operate, where they're not siloed, but they're blended so that this information can flow. Whereas, so many departments, it's like socials here and they don't talk to anyone else. And those insights just don't make it back to a lot of departments, which would greatly benefit. So that's really cool to hear. It sounds like in my brain, I've got these ideas on, like, we could do a whole session on that follow up, because it's so interesting. And I'm also really excited to hear you guys are doing cauliflower rice. So if you need any taste testers in the Fort Myers area, that's where I am. So that's really awesome. That's awesome. So are there other food trends you're seeing? I've seen a lot of, vegans big, or, are there other things that are poking up that you guys are exploring that you feel like are on the rise for, maybe next year that are things to take note of? And maybe you can't share, maybe that's proprietary.
Yeah, I'll touch on it a little bit. But like you said, yeah, vegan's huge. People are talking about, and I mean, you've seen it from us most recently with Real Food Print that we just pushed out, and also Panera launched Cool Foods. So you see it a lot. People are starting to think about how their food choices are affecting the environment. So that's an area that, Panera and Chipotle have both jumped in recent conversations and recent initiatives. But yeah, I mean, that ties hand in hand with veganism and how people are talking about their better food choices. Maybe it's not going all the way. It's kind of like Meatless Monday had its fad, a couple of years ago. And people are starting to really think that way. And I think that's a testament to Gen Z and kind of the priorities that they have in, environmental cognizance, like how they're thinking about everything they do and how that affects the climate. So I think that's a big one. I won't go too much into product innovation, but yeah, I mean, you definitely nailed that right on. Definitely thinking about how food affects the climate, and veganism is a huge part of that.
That's awesome. And that's something I've seen too, is just, with the pandemic, I feel like there's been such a shift to takeout, even for people who weren't doing takeout before. But then you start seeing there's so much disposable everything. And I start in my brain thinking about what kind of impact is this having on the environment? So it's really cool to see that you guys are really front and center of that conversation. And I really wish more people were. So that's awesome. So I want to shift gears, before we run out of time, and just talk a little bit about let's just say there was someone that was new to NetBase and they're really trying to dig in and maximize their time and how they'll get to those insights, if you will. Are there any tips you would give, like where you find a lot of value? Even if you're just like a new user, where do you find those kind of the best places to go to kind of get you in the right direction, if you will, on finding the stuff that's going to help you understand what's going on with your brand, from a brand health perspective, or, to dig a little deeper. There are things that you would point, or places in the platform that you would point people to first to take advantage of.
Yeah, manage your service hours and training hours. That was huge to get started with NetBase. You may have been in an analytic tool before, even if you weren't. That was absolutely huge. I mean, very big shout out to Ian and Dave. Those are, service for Chipotle. But, it really does help to make sure you understand the fundamentals and exactly where everything is, but also just poking around. But I would say probably one of the biggest things that's helped us from a brand health perspective when using NetBase is not limiting ourselves to just a Chipotle topic, making sure that you're using maybe some of your Firehouse data to make sure you have apples to apples comparisons with, key competitors that you're watching on a regular day-to-day basis as it is. Spend those data that you may have have to, get that full picture. Make sure that you're not jumping straight into a very specific, search theme. Have it a little bit broader and start to eliminate terms as you go, so you're not cutting out a key insight that maybe you never, starting broad and getting narrow as you go. AI Studio was a huge addition for us. We didn't start out with it, and we added it on, and it was a amazing, save efficiency, saving time, and also making sure, to the point earlier, that you're not excluding any key insights that you thought maybe were relevant at first when you were making your theme, but then, you see them pop up in a different light whenever you pop that in AI Studio. So that was an incredible addition as well that I would urge people to consider.
I think you're spot on. Like, AI Studio is a really cool innovation out of NetBase. I don't think people realize NetBase is, our technology behind the scenes is pretty powerful. And I can say this, I've worked in this space for a long time. I've worked for a lot of our competitors, and I think a lot of people think that all word clouds are created equal, and they're not. It's the technology behind it. So, and then to add that extra layer of AI Studio, it really does surface things that you don't know about. And I say, like, when you look at our competitors, for example, like, seeing words of things that you already know, that's not insightful. It's what you don't know. So I think that's why AI Studio can be, a game changer for sure. So, well, I think we're just about at the top of the hour for this presentation. And Jen, it's been so fun to learn more about, how you guys have pivoted. And I love seeing all the activations you guys have been doing. And I really just wish, honestly, I wish I was eating more Chipotle these days. So if you see an uptick in the Fort Myers area, it could be me and in your sales data. But it's really been interesting just to see what you guys are doing behind the scenes and how you're giving back as well. I think that's, I think that's really means a lot to a lot of people. So thank you for joining us. I'm just going to go ahead and let everyone know here on this presentation. If you missed anything from NetBase Quid Live, you can watch some of our past presentations. They'll be available to replay. And if you want to jump in on the conversation, feel free to use the hashtag NetBase Quid Live so you can add your 2 cents or see what other people are saying and be part of that conversation. And so thanks so much, Jen Savage, for joining us today and being part of our conference. And thanks for all of you guys tuning in. And we definitely look forward to having you guys join some of our other presentations. So with that, I'm going to sign off for now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Robin.